And I remember this girl ends up walking up to this other girl that was trying to flirt with me and straight up just starts punching her out of nowhere. I never understood why these two girls were fighting over me that was a nerd. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba, and welcome back to another super embarrassing, but I gotta say crazy story. Now, this story all takes place back when I was in middle school, and I'm not gonna lie, in my grade 6 year, I wasn't the craziest or cool kid that you guys think I was. I was just a basic nerd that played video games and honestly was obsessed with superheroes. Like, I could tell you anything about a superhero, but when it came to, like, you know, getting girls or playing sports, well, I was far from it. Also, not gonna lie, since it was only my grade 6 year and I barely hit puberty at this time, I was actually pretty smart. I didn't have any distractions other than school, video games, and, well, superheroes. And even still to this day, I love those three things other than school. I guess you could say replace the school with women. But going on, I remember one time my grade 6 year, this was like the first 2 weeks of me being into middle school. And reminder, grade 6 is like the first year of middle school. So me being a total newbie, I remember I was walking down the school hallway and I only knew so very few people. So knowing that I was a complete loner, one thing I would always do was write in my journal. And before anyone says anything, yes, it's a journal, not a diary. But basically, I had this book that my mom gave me in the beginning of the school year, and she told me to write down my feelings and basically keep track of what's going on in my life. I don't know if she did this to track over what I was doing and read it for herself later on, but hell, it was something better to do than just sit there and do absolutely nothing, since I wasn't allowed to bring my Nintendo DS to school. So I remember I would always just sit down in random moments of the day, either by a tree or right beside my locker, and just start writing in my journal. Actually, to this day, I have the journal. If you guys do want a video on it to see through it, comment down below. But I remember I was basically writing down in my journal one day, 2 weeks into my grade 6 year, and then out of nowhere, I ended up seeing a girl walk up to me. She walked up to me and she was actually considered one of the cool girls at school, and she looks at me and says, "Bubba, what are you doing sitting down, always writing in that silly book? Is something going on?" I ended up just staring at her, not knowing what to say, because once again, I didn't have any skibbity riz, and I had like zero aura. That sounded really cringe me saying that. I'm sorry, but going on with the story. I didn't know what to say to her, and I just ended up staring at her straight into her face, and she looks at me once again and says, "Are you like deaf or something? Is that why you write in the book?" Huh? Oh, no, sorry. I was just writing down notes for science class. What's up? Oh, nothing. I just wanted to come over here and say, like, I never see you hang out with anybody. Do you need like friends or something? I remember that moment, more girls started to crowd around where I was, and it got to the point where a lot of girls just ended up surrounding me to the point where I felt uncomfortable. I ended up standing up and basically closed my book and put it in my backpack as fast as possible because I did not want any of these girls reading my journal. But then one of the girls, right as I put it away, ended up saying, "I'm not gonna lie, he's actually kind of cute." At that moment, a lot of girls started complimenting me, and I was just being surrounded by women for absolutely no reason. I ended up just walking away, and I just said, "I'll talk to you guys later, bye." And I just ended up leaving. At that moment, all the girls were curious and confused because any guy in that position would literally just feel like they're on top of the world. So them being absolutely lost, I remember throughout the rest of that school day, I would have random girls one at a time walk up to me and start asking me questions about, you know, what I think about them and do I think they're attractive and all this weird stuff that I'd never really understood. And me, I just ended up saying to all of them that they were cute and basically said the same thing to every single person. And let's just say that got me into a lot of trouble because I remember later on that school day at lunch, I ended up going to this tree that had a lot of shade under it, and I would sit under and start writing my journal. I ended up writing how basically I had a bunch of girls after me and how I felt crazy and special. But then right as I was writing that, a girl walks up to me again. She walks up to me and says, "Bubba, I need you to be honest with me. Do you actually like think I'm cute? Because like you said it earlier, but like I need to hear it again." At that moment, I looked at her and I just said the same thing. Yeah, I think you're cute." And right as I say that, out of nowhere, another girl ends up popping around the tree that I was sitting at, and she says, "Wait, Bubba, did you just call her cute? But you called me cute. So like, who's cuter?" At that moment, I just pushed up my glasses in total embarrassment, and I didn't know what to say. So I ended up just looking at both of them, and I just said, I don't know. You guys are pretty even if you ask me." At that moment, I thought these two girls would start hating me, or even getting to the point of beating me up. But no, what one of the girls decided to do was turn to the other girl and say, "I think he's just saying that because you're here. Honestly, he definitely thinks I'm cuter." Excuse me? Why would he think you're cuter? I'm definitely way more attractive than you. So what I ended up doing as these two girls were arguing was that I just stood up and walked away. I didn't want to get in trouble by anyone, and to be honest, it was my first year of middle school. There's no way I was gonna get into any trouble. But right as I was walking away, another girl ends up walking up to me saying, "Hey Bubba, honestly, like I was thinking we should hang out sometime." And right as the other two girls were in the middle of arguing, they ended up looking looking over at the girl that just walked up to me, and they all ended up basically colliding heads, and they started yelling at each other. One girl even said, "Are you kidding me? Like, you guys gotta understand, he's literally mine. Like, I'm gonna make him my boyfriend." What is what I said? I was so confused. You guys have no idea, but at the same time, it was middle school, and in middle school, I don't think anyone knows what love actually is. But as they were all like basically getting in the way of each other and started yelling about who's actually gonna date me and stuff, I ended up just looking at all of them and I said, "Okay guys, stop it. This is getting weird. Honestly, just be honest with me. Like, why do you guys even like me?" And that's when one of the girls ended up saying, because you're like a cute nerd and like that's like the new cool." Like, what? To be honest, I'll never understand how nerd ended up becoming the new cool. I don't know if because video games got more popular or everyone just started to like Spider-Man so much because he's a nerd that also is a superhero. But I'm gonna be honest, I ended up just looking at all these girls and saying, "Guys, I don't think I'm gonna date anyone, to be honest. I'm just gonna go inside now." I ended up going inside and I remember the bell ended up ringing for lunch being over. And let's just say what ended up happening next got really, really weird, because I remember I ended up going into my next class and I had a class with all three of these girls at once. So as I'm sitting inside the classroom, I ended up realizing that I forgot my textbook for my next class. So right as I was about to put my hand up to ask the teacher if I can go quickly get my textbook from my locker, which was 10 steps away, by the way, I remember one of the girls that ended up arguing outside earlier looked at me and said, "Oh, Bubba, I got you. Don't worry." And she ended up giving me her textbook. She sacrificed her textbook for me to use it. At that moment, I looked at her and I just said, "Oh, thank you," and basically started using the textbook. Then later on in the same class, I remember we ended up getting a worksheet that we had to fill out. And me, for some reason, my pencil ended up breaking midway through, or I guess getting dull. So right as I was about to stand up and go use the sharpener that was literally on the wall, another girl that also was arguing outside earlier, we'll just call her girl number 2 for this moment. Girl number 2 ends up giving me a pencil sharpener and says, "Oh, Bubba, here, don't worry about it. I got you, cutie." Thanks. Yeah, I'll use it. And I started sharpening my pencil. Now, this made girl number 1 super upset and super annoyed to the point where she rolled her eyes at her. But things get even worse, because I remember after we ended up filling the worksheets, I remember we ended up having to pass it to another person to check it through and give us our marks for it. For some reason, our teacher never actually wanted to, like, you know, do the grading herself. So she ended up basically handing it around to other students in the class because it's a lot easier to go through. And I remember I ended up handing my worksheet out, but right as I got another person's worksheet, I realized that I had no pen. I don't know what it is for this specific day, but apparently I forgot almost all my school supplies. So right as I was about to mark this guy's work with a highlighter that I was going to use, I remember girl number 3 ends up walking up to me saying, "Oh, Bubba, do you need a pen? Here, I got you, babe." She ended up giving me a pen and I looked at her and I said, yeah, thanks." And I started checking his work. And this made girl number 1 and girl number 2 absolutely furious, to the point where they both stood up right as we're about to mark the worksheet saying, "Are you serious? Are you really going after him like that? Okay, you need to be quiet. You know you're going after him as well. You're not any different. Like, stay away from him. He's mine." Oh boy. At that moment, everyone in the classroom just went silent and all the guys were just staring at me confused on what in the world was going on with these girls. And basically they started arguing and it got to the point where one girl ended up pulling out their fist and punched the other girl. They started fighting in the classroom, and for some reason when girls fight, the number one thing to do is start pulling hair. So we had these 3 girls basically pulling each other's hair like it was crazy. I was so confused on what was going on, and the teacher got involved and she started basically, you know, pulling the girls apart from each other, and it got really bad. It got to the point where actually one of the girls ended up pulling a chunk of her hair out of her skull. Kind of scary, honestly. But I remember they all ended up going to the office and I just ended up sitting there hoping that I was home free. But then like 20 minutes later, I ended up getting called down to the office and I basically got pretty good advice from the principal. He ended up saying, "Son, I'm gonna be honest with you. You gotta not flirt or tell all these girls the same thing. If you like a specific girl, tell her that. But don't tell all of them the same thing, because it just leads into a large catastrophe. You understand me, son?" Yeah, I understand. Okay, you can go back to class now." I ended up going back to class, and yeah, that was basically the last time I ever spoken to those girls. And I'm gonna be honest, what would you guys do in my position? And I remember when I went outside, I ended up seeing this guy that used to be my fan, I guess, walk up to me and say, "Yo, Bubba, why are you talking to my girl, bro? She's not a story time." Wait, what? Bro, I'm not trying to make her a story time. And then he ended up trying to punch me in the face. Like, what? Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba, and welcome back to another insane story. And trust me, this story is really crazy. So my suggestion is leaving a like and subscribing if you haven't already. But basically, this story all starts off, I want to say 3 years ago, back when I first blew up on YouTube. 3 years ago, I think we were just hitting 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, and we had over 1 million followers on TikTok. And don't get get me wrong, I love you guys for this, so thank you guys so much. Like, it seriously means a lot. But I remember around that time, I was planning on doing an upgrade to my gaming setup, so I decided to go to the mall and basically go buy some things to upgrade my setup with. If you guys don't know, I have a really cool gaming setup, so if this video gets like 1,000 likes, then I'll probably show it off in a video. But going on with the story, I remember as I was in the mall looking at some computer parts to upgrade my setup with, out of nowhere, I ended up noticing a guy that was kind of like in the corner of the store, kind of just staring me down as if I was like some sort of criminal. Like, I don't really know why, but I thought he was maybe just some racist guy maybe. But then out of nowhere, I saw him pull out his phone and he kept looking at his phone and looking at me. And at that moment, I kind of started getting suspicious, thinking, oh, like maybe he's just a fan. And I kind of just ended up walking away, kind of keeping my distance. Because I'm going to be honest here, if a fan sees me in public or someone that watches my videos sees me in public, I'd rather them walk up to me than walk up to them, because I don't want to be wrong about them being a fan, because what if they hate me? You know what I mean? So I ended up basically walking away and kind of just doing my own thing. But as I was walking away, he would kind of follow me. Now at this point, I found it weird because obviously being followed is not fun for any person whatsoever, famous or not. But as I was picking up the things I wanted and I went to the cashier, I realized that he was like actually somewhat near me in the lineup. And right away, when I spoke to the cashier, like telling him like what I want to use to pay, he ended up hearing my voice. And right away at that moment, he knew who I was. Because when I looked at him, his eyes opened wide. And right as I started heading for the door to leave, he ended up skipping the cashier line and running straight out the doors and saying, yo, excuse me, I have a question. Yeah, what's going on? Are you the Devil's Tango guy that's on the internet that like tells stories and stuff? Yeah, that's me. What's going on, man? Dude, like, I love your stories, bro. They're actually so funny and relatable. At this point, he was kind of like being nice to me, and I'm not gonna lie, he even got to a point where he said, like, bro, I hope one day I can pull as many girls as you, man. And I'm not gonna lie, when a person says that to me, I'm gonna tell you the truth right now. I don't want to be glorified or looked up to for pulling a bunch of girls. I'd rather be known for telling just a funny story, but I don't want you guys to know me as a lady slayer, even though I was. But going on with the story, I ended up basically telling him like, oh, like, don't worry about it. I'm happy you enjoy the videos. And I ended up walking away. But as I was walking away, I realized this guy would just end up following me around the mall. So I got really uncomfortable and it actually ended up leaving. I got in my car and he took a photo of my car, by the way, which I found really weird. And I ended up driving off. Now, it was very obvious to me that this guy was like 19, 20 years old. So he was like around the same age as me. But him watching my videos honestly made me realize that a lot of different people watch my content. So like, it made me really surprised. Now, me thinking that was the end of me not seeing him again, well, I was really wrong, because the next time I ended up seeing this guy was insane. Because I want to say like 2 weeks went by, and me, I used to live in a penthouse near a club that I would go to a lot of the time. And I remember there was one specific moment where my friend ended up texting me saying, yo, Bubba, we're going to the club tonight. Do you want to come down and come with us? I don't know, man. I got like a couple stories to record. Dude, like, come on, you can't take one day off. Like, the stories aren't gonna kill you. And at this moment, I was like, you know what? I gotta make more stories anyway. Let's just go out and see what's going on. So I ended up getting ready to go for the club. And when I got downstairs, I saw my friends and he ended up bringing more friends of his. And out of nowhere, I ended up realizing that one of the people that he brought along was the person that I met at the mall that apparently was a fan of me. He ended up walking up to me saying, wait, you're Bubba Streams. What? Dude, wait, you're going to the club with us? Yeah, I guess I am. What's going on, man? It's good to see you again. And me and him, we started hanging out until I realized right behind him was a girl. Now, this girl, she looked like a nice girl and everything. And she looked at me and said, oh, like, are you the guy that like he watches all the time? Oh, I don't know about all the time, but like, if you mean the story times, then yeah, that's me. And this girl, right away, I started to realize that this girl was like really into me. Like, I don't know what it is, but you know that feeling when you look at a girl's eyes and you just end up seeing that she's really into you, kind of? I kind of got that feeling from her. And at that moment, I had a suspicion, but I didn't think anything of it. I wanted to hang out with my friends, just go to the club like the plan was originally. So that's what we did. We ended up going to the club. We ended up having a good time. We went to the dance floor, hung out, all this cool stuff. But right as the guy that was a fan of me ended up going to the bathroom, right away, I noticed that his girlfriend at the time ended up coming up beside me, sitting right next to me, and started talking to me. She started asking me questions like, oh, like, so like you do this like full time? Oh my goodness. So like you live on the top floor of that place? Oh my goodness. Like, so like you're like considered famous. Like, that's actually insane. And she started basically flirting with me, and it got to the point where it was really just sad. Because don't get me wrong, when I meet girls nowadays, I don't tell them I'm a YouTuber. I don't tell them I'm famous in any way, shape, or form. Because one thing I realized as I started getting popular on the internet is that people treat you differently according to your following. Like, I personally don't think I am any different than the person watching this video right now. But I'm gonna be real with you guys. I started to realize that she started basically really flirting with me, and I kind of felt bad to the point where, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't want to interact with this girl anymore. So what I decided to do is basically get up from the table we were sitting at the club, and I started heading for the dance floor. floor. But once I started heading for the dance floor, she instantly started following right behind me. And as I was in the middle of dancing, she decided to basically grab me and make it look like me and her were dancing together. Now, I didn't know what to do. I was actually really annoyed. But then out of nowhere, far away in the distance, I realized that the guy that was a fan of me, that this girl was dating, by the way, saw what was going on. He looks at me and says, "No way Bubba's making her into a story." At this moment, I didn't know what to do or what to say. So what I decided to do was just do the one thing I knew what to do, and that was get out of there. I ended up basically pushing her off me, and I went straight outside the club doors and I left. But as I was leaving, walking back to my penthouse, out of nowhere, he ends up coming up behind me and pulls me around saying, "Bubba, what are you doing, bro? Like, why are you trying to make my girl into a story time?" What? No, bro, I'm not trying to make her into a story. That's not what I was trying to do. She came on to me. And then instantly he decided to throw a punch at me and he hit me right in the face. Now this moment I got upset, and I'm not gonna lie, if you guys have not known, I've been in a couple fights before, okay? So like I know how to do it. I know how it goes down. So I ended up basically fighting this guy in the parking lot of this club, and me and him, we started scrapping each other left and right. And it got to the point where all my friends ended up coming in and trying to pull us off, and one guy actually ended up recording saying, "Bubba Streams is fighting someone. Bubba Streams is fighting." And it got so annoying, and it really just pissed me off, because I'm gonna be real with you guys, like it is not fun to fight someone, especially when you're like an adult. Like, come on, really? Like, we're not kids anymore. And well, one thing led to another. I remember I ended up basically like getting held back, and when we were both getting held back by our friends, he ended up basically tearing up and crying right afterwards. I remember at that moment I felt terrible. Like, yeah, I maybe want to fight with this guy, but at the same time, he was a fan of mine. He was someone that actually like cared about my content, and I just ended up beating him up. Like, are you kidding me right now? So I ended up walking up to him and apologizing. Like, I told him like the truth about what happened, and honestly, he ended up saying that he didn't believe me, but at the end of the day, what else could I say? Like, if he doesn't believe me, he doesn't believe me. I don't know. It was really sad and everything, but one thing it made me realize is that I am definitely considered the guy that you have to worry about. You know what I mean? Like, even my friend group nowadays, if they get a girlfriend, they don't introduce me because they don't want to see if they're actually a gold digger or not, which is the sad truth, honestly. Okay, so one thing that I've noticed is that YouTube boxing has actually gotten like really big. Like, don't get me wrong, I saw the first fights of when like KSI and like Logan Paul were like such a big deal, but now seeing that KSI is officially fighting people like Tommy Temper for some reason, like really like face Temper out of all people who could box, I don't know, honestly, I think it's gone so downhill. And that leads me to the question, if I had to box someone, and I mean literally any YouTuber, who would you think I would box? I was thinking about doing Austin Luna, or maybe I would even box Scrubs. I don't know, I'll literally box anyone. I'm gonna be brutally honest, because like, don't get me wrong, being in the ring is exciting for me, and I think it's pretty cool. And this story is about how I actually got into the ring one time with my high school bully. And trust me, this story does get intense, so make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and let's get straight into the story. All right, what is going on, you guys? My name is Bubba, and welcome back to another insane story. So this story starts back, actually, funny enough, I want to say in my grade 11 year. Now in grade 11, I was already really known throughout the school for being with a lot of different girls and stuff, and don't get me wrong, I was like a major player and always doing the devil's tango. But one thing I never realized as I was doing all these things is that a lot of guys would envy me. And by envy, I mean be jealous of me. Now at first, I didn't really care why, nor did I really want to bother, because either way, I still had the boys that were like my close friends that understood me and well enough to know that I'm not that kind of person to really care for the girls I've been with. But for some reason, there was one guy in my school who would always pick on me, but not only pick on me, but pick on a lot of different other people. Now, don't get me wrong, this guy in no way was he like charming or was he attractive or nothing like that whatsoever. But one thing I can say was that a lot of women would turn him down, and a lot of the women that turned him down have actually done the devil's tango with me. Anyways, I remember one day I was sitting in the cafeteria, just kind of chilling, being on my own, and I was just kind of just writing a paper that I had to do for English class. And out of nowhere, the guy was literally coming into the cafeteria, the bully that, well, no one really liked. And I remember he was just kind of walking around the cafeteria, and I found it really odd. But then I remember a girl ended up running into the cafeteria and running into him saying, "Oh, hey, I got your message. You want to talk to me? Like, what's going on?" And as I was overhearing their conversation, because they were literally like right behind me, I remember this guy that like no one liked in my school literally said, "Oh, like, I was just wondering, like, do you want to like maybe like go out sometime?" As I was hearing this, I was really like kind of like weirded out, but at the same time almost kind of laughing, because I don't know, I found it funny. Just, I don't know, it was just a funny moment. Like, don't you guys laugh when like you hear something like really awkward come out of someone else's mouth? I know I do. So basically when I heard that, I was kind of like giggling, and then out of nowhere, I remember seeing this girl, she looked at me, and then she looked back at the guy and said, "Oh, I'm sorry. It's just like, trust me, it's not you, it's me. Like, I just don't think I'm ready for a relationship yet." And when a girl says this, I'm saying this right now, it is the most cap, most BS thing that any girl could would say. Like, no joke. When a girl would say that, I'm saying this right now, the problem isn't her. It's definitely you. So to all the guys that's been told, oh, like, it's nothing with you, it's me. No, just know it is actually you. Like, figure out your stuff, bro. But basically, I remember hearing that and I literally couldn't hold it anymore. And I literally got up and left the cafeteria. I didn't want to be mean and literally laugh right in front of him. So I decided to be nice and left the cafeteria and started laughing when I was going down the hallway. But as I was walking down the hallway, I remember out of nowhere, the girl that was literally just asked out came up beside me and said, oh, hey, Bubba, like, what are you doing? I remember I was just walking with her and I'm like, oh, nothing, you know, just chilling, just hanging out and stuff. What about you? And me and her, we started walking together to her next class. I remember as we were walking though, this guy ended up going through the outside cafeteria doors and entering in the school where we just walked to. And when we entered in, he literally saw me and her literally standing together and talking. Now, the girl's back was facing him, so obviously the girl didn't notice he was there. And this girl, for some reason, had the gall, and I mean the literal gall, to literally ask me out right in front of him. No joke. She was like, oh, like, hey, I was just wondering, like, you're really cute, and like, I'm not really doing anything this Saturday. Do you want to like maybe go out sometime? I remember I looked at the girl and I looked at the guy behind him, which is like the bully that literally just asked her out. And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna be for real with you. I think I'm busy that day. You know, I'm just chilling. And then this guy was so infumed, like literally in flames. Like, I'm not joking. He literally looked like the character from Inside Out, the red character with like the red flames coming out of him. Yeah, he literally looked just like that. Mad at me, dude. Like, he was so mad to the point where he decided to come into our conversation, pop up behind the girl and say, oh, okay, I get it now. So you're gonna ask him out, but you're not gonna go out with me even though I asked you. What kind of woman are you? What does this guy have that I don't? And right as he says that, he ends up pushing me up against the lockers. Now, at this point, I'm not gonna lie. I was in grade 11. I ain't no wuss at this time and age. So I remember I literally stood up against him. I'm like, hey, what do you mean? What's wrong with me, bro? And then afterwards, we start kind of like, you know, pushing each other in the hallway. And then a teacher comes out of the classroom, says, hey, boys, this is not the setting for a fight. Seriously, take it to the office. So me and this dude, we end up going to the office and, you know, we had a talking to, blah, 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 all that office stuff where the principal really never knows what's going on. And then afterwards, me and this guy, we ended up walking away and going our separate ways. Now, usually I would hope the story would end here, but sadly it didn't. Because I remember one time my buddy saw me and he was like, yo, bro, like, I'm taking this new boxing gym, like, course. Do you want to, like, come with me? I heard you're, like, kind of experienced in boxing. Which, since I did, like, boxing in, like, middle school, and this was, like, just for a bit, and that's a story for a different time. But, you know, boxing in middle school, I had, like, little experience, but at the same time, I was still a kid, so I never really, like, got back into it. I don't know. I just prefer video games instead. But when he invited me, I remember this was a good friend of mine, and I decided to try it out. So I remember in grade 11, we ended up going to this boxing gym. Now, this boxing gym was, like, really, like, run down. Like, it was, like, one of those ones that you would see, like, Rocky Balboa go into, like, in, like, the movies. It was just a basic rundown boxing gym. And I won't lie, it was pretty cool. I remember me and my buddy were just practicing sparring, and, you know, we were punching the bag and doing the same old usual things that boxers usually do when they train. And then out of nowhere, I'm not joking when I say this, out of nowhere, this guy that literally was basically a bully at my school walked into the boxing gym. And when he saw me, I'm not joking when I say this, he literally drops his duffel bag that he was carrying with his boxing gloves in it and walks up to me saying, oh, that's good, I found you here, little bum. And he ended up pushing me on the ground. I remember I looked at him like, dude, you need to calm down. Like, seriously, this is not gonna get you anywhere. Like, what do you want to do, huh? What are you gonna do, huh? And basically started, like, you know, yelling at him somewhat in the boxing gym. And then out of nowhere, these two guys ended up coming up behind us both, like these two really big guys, like that were like really built, and kind of just started pulling us back and like basically making sure that we don't actually hurt each other with our bare knuckle fists. And then afterward, basically, we ended up getting separated apart, and the guys at the boxing gym were talking to us and saying that if you guys want to fight each other, there's only one place to fight, and that's in the ring. So I remember basically me and him, we signed it up for the ring, and basically we were going to do an actual boxing fight, like an actual boxing match. But obviously we had to schedule the ring and everything, so we ended up scheduling it for Saturday. Now, the day I went to the boxing gym was on Wednesday, and basically throughout the 2 days of me going to school and going to the boxing gym to practice for the fight, everyone in the school started finding out about it. Girls at my school started finding out, and a lot of my homies at school ended up figuring out what was going on, and basically all wanted to go. So it got to the point where I want to say over 50 people in my school, and I'm not gonna lie, I think 30 of them were actually chicks and 20 of them were guys that were good friends of mine, literally ended up showing up on Saturday to the boxing gym to watch me beat this guy. We all ended up going to the boxing gym. We ended up basically, you know, getting ready and stuff, and I started practicing on my side of the ring while he was practicing on his side of the ring. We were sparring for a bit, you know, practicing with our partners, and then afterwards we got ready and we sat down, we got ready for boxing. Now, I'm not gonna lie, we only used like, I think 6-pound gloves. We didn't use like any actual like heavyweight gloves that were like, you know, usually 10-pound gloves that most boxing people use in like the actual rings. We're using basic gloves. We had helmets on, obviously, because we were not really planning on knocking someone out. I personally like my face, you know, I like to keep my face for YouTube. And basically me and him, we ended up basically going to our sides, prepping up, talking to our guys, and then afterwards we sat down, we got ready. The announcer came on stage and basically said, all right, in this corner, we have a Rash Baba Muini. And in this corner, we have, well, I'm not going to say his name because, you know, the story is about him and I don't want any legal trouble. So yeah, going on. Basically from there, the bell ended up ringing. We ended up going up against each other. We started fighting. I ended up punching him. He was punching me. You know, the basic same old that you usually see in the boxing ring. But then afterwards, this guy has the audacity, and I mean the audacity, to punch me in the back of the head. And when he punched me in the back of the head, don't get me wrong, it hurt, but it was a very not legal move, meaning that he was not allowed to punch me in the back of the head. It is like a basic boxing rule you're not allowed to do. But obviously, I didn't complain about it. I just moved on from it and said, hey, you want to fight like that? We can do that. So basically from there, I remember this guy was a bit taller than me, by the way. I was only like 5'7" at the time, I think. And basically this guy was like, I want to say almost 6 foot. So one thing I really had to do was that since he had more of a reach on me, I ended up punching his liver a lot. And when you hit someone in the stomach that is really taller than you, it hurts a lot, especially when you hit the liver area. At least that's what you learn when you're doing basic fighting training. And then from there, basically one thing led to another. I ended up punching his liver. His face ended up going down, and that's when I uppercutted him. I no joke uppercutted the guy, and basically I remember he ended up going on the ground. He was on the ground, but I guess he didn't really understand boxing rules because he ended up staying on the ground longer than 10 seconds. At this point, I remember the bell rang and I'm like, oh my goodness, I actually just won. Everyone started freaking out. Everyone started like, you know, yelling, congratulations, yay. And don't get me wrong, it felt good, but as he was laying on the ground crying, I basically saw in his eyes that he was really upset when he saw the girl basically cheering for me that he asked out the other day. And at that point, I remember I basically helped him get up and I dabbed him up and said, bro, good fight. And then afterwards, he kind of just ended up being a good friend of mine. And to this day, we're still friends. Well, somewhat. I don't know. I don't really talk to him much anymore, but hey, what can I say? It was a good fight and I ended up getting friends out of it. Anyways, guys, that's basically it for today's story. Make sure to do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And like I always say, just fall for more embarrassing stories.